Tomorrow by Lu Xun. Translated and read by Peter Rambo. There's not a sound from in there. What's wrong with him? Red-nosed Gong said, holding a bowl of yellow wine and looking towards the neighbor's wall. Blue-skinned Dao put down his bowl of wine, slapped him roughly on the back. Vaguely, he shouted, "Yo, you thinking about that again?" Lu Xun was a secluded town and quite traditional, and before 9 o'clock in the evening the doors were closed and everyone went to bed. Late that night, there were still only two places where people were awake. The Shenheng Hotel, where a few happy customers were sat around the bar eating meat and drinking wine, and in the neighboring house, Si. She had become a widow last year and relied on cotton spinning to support herself and her 3-year-old son Bao, and that was why she was up so late. But for the last few days there'd been no sound of spinning, as Gong and the customers at the hotel were the only ones left in the town awake. Naturally, they noticed the silence coming from Si's home. Just after Gong had been hit by Awu, he continued taking a large mouthful of drink and began to sing as though still completely fine. Meanwhile, Si was sitting on the edge of her bed, cradling Bao. The spinning wheel stood silently on the floor. Murky lantern light shone upon Bao's face, bringing some crimson to his pale complexion. "I have prayed to the gods," Si thought. "I have a clear heart, and have given him a home remedy. If this can't cure him, what can? The only thing left would be to see Dr. He, but maybe the illness is only bad at night, and tomorrow morning his fever might go, his breathing might get better. That's normal when someone's sick." Si was a simple woman, and did not understand how fearful the word but can be. No doubt many bad things turn out well, but many good things turn out badly. The summer nights are short. Soon after Gong and the customers had finished singing, a white light came from the east and silver sunbeams seeped in through the window. Waiting for tomorrow was not easy for Si. She felt like it would never come. Each of her son's breath felt like a year passing. Suddenly, the morning light came through and overpowered the lantern light. She saw Bao's nostrils flaring in and out as he struggled to breathe. Si knew that this was serious. Quietly, she said, and thought, what can I do? There is only one route left. Go to see Dr. He. Although she was a simple woman, her heart had turned resolute. She stood and pried up the wooden board where she kept her savings every day. She had 13 silvers and 180 coppers. She put the money in her pocket, locked the door, and cradling Bao, rushed to Dr. He's home. Although it was early, and Dr. He already had 4 patients waiting, Si paid 4 silvers and took her ticket. When it was Bao's turn, Dr. He took his pulse. Si marveled at the doctor's 4-inch nails. My son will surely live, she thought. But still feeling uneasy, she couldn't help but ask him, "Doctor, what's wrong with him?" His digestive tract is blocked." "Can you open it up?" "No. First take 2 of these." "He can't breathe. What about his nose?" "The element of fire will overcome the element of metal." The doctor began to say something else, then closed his eyes. Si felt embarrassed and didn't ask him anything more. Opposite them sat a man in his 30s. He'd already written out a prescription. He indicated to something written on the corner. "You must get the pills from Zhao's shop." Si took the prescription, thinking as she walked. Although she was a simple woman, she knew that Zhao's shop, the doctor's, and her home formed a kind of triangle. It would be easier to get the medicine first, then go home. She hurried as fast as she could to the shop. The assistant there had long fingernails too. He slowly looked over the prescription and wrapped up the medicine. Si cradled Bao as she walked. Suddenly, he brought up one of his tiny hands and tugged at a loose strand of hair. He'd never done this before. Si was afraid. The sun was rising higher. The more Sun walked, the heavier Bao and the package seemed to become. Bao would not stop struggling, and the road seemed to be growing longer. She couldn't go on. She sat down to rest by the entrance to a large house. Her clothes were cold and sticky. She realized she'd been sweating all over. Bao seemed to be sleeping. Si got up once more and went on slowly. The burden was still too much. Suddenly, she heard someone say, "Sir, let me take that for you." It sounded like Ah Wu. She raised her head to look. It was. She walked along with him, her eyes tired and glazed. Si would have preferred an angel to come down and help her, but she wouldn't have picked Ah Wu. Still, he was being courteous and wanted to help. After several refusals, she let him. As Ah Wu took the child and package from her breast, she felt a flush spreading to her cheeks and then to her ears. The two walked together, a little way apart. Ah Wu talked, but Si didn't say much. Soon Ah Wu passed the child back and explained that he had arranged to meet some friends. Si took Bao. Luckily, she was nearly home. She could see Mother Wang by the steps opposite her house. Wang called out, "Si, how's your son? Did you go to see the doctor?" "Yes, I saw him." "Mother Wang, you've seen so much. No one knows more than you. Would you look at him?" What? Wang looked him up and down. She nodded her head, then shook it twice. It was afternoon by the time Bao had taken the medicine, so carefully looked him over. He seemed a lot quieter. That afternoon he'd suddenly opened his eyes and cried out, "Ma!" but then closed them as if going back to sleep. As he slept, sweat began dripping down his forehead and onto his nose. So gently wiped the sweat away. It stuck to her hand like glue. Panicking, she began wiping his forehead and couldn't help but cry. Bao's breathing grew quieter until it was silent. Su's crying grew louder. At this point, a few people had begun to crowd inside her doorway. Wang and Awu were among them. Outside was the landlord of Shenheng Hotel and Gong too. Wang took charge and began issuing orders. She told them to burn a string of paper money and traded 2 of Su's stools and 5 pieces of clothing for silver. She then began to prepare a meal for everyone helping. The first problem was the coffin. Su had a pair of silver earrings and a gold and silver hairpiece. She gave them to the landlord. It would be enough to get the coffin if half of it was on credit. Awu wanted to help, but Wang wouldn't let him. She said the only thing he could do was help carry the casket tomorrow. "You old cow." Awu called out and stood around looking disgruntled. The landlord came back that evening. He said the coffin had to be specially made, so it wouldn't be ready until late that night. By the time the landlord had returned, everyone had finished eating. Because Lu Xun was a secluded place and quite traditional, everyone began heading home to sleep. Only Awu sat drinking at the Shenheng Hotel bar, while Gong sat there with him. Meanwhile, Su sat at the end of her bed crying. Bao still lay beside her. The loom stood silently on the floor. After a while, Su had no more tears to shed. She opened her eyes and looked around. It's just too strange, she thought. None of this could have happened. Tomorrow I'll wake and everything will be fine and Bao will be well beside me. "Ma," he'll call, full of energy, and jump down from the bed to play. The sound of Gon's singing faded, and the lanterns in the Shenheng Hotel went out. Su opened her eyes. She did not believe any of it. The roosters began crowing. A white light came from the east, and dawn's silver sunbeams seeped in through the window. The light gradually turned crimson red and fell upon the rear of the room. Su stared ahead of her. She was sitting completely still when she was startled by a knock on the door. She ran to open it. In the doorway was someone she didn't recognize, carrying something on their back. Behind them stood Wang. Oh, they were carrying the coffin. It was not until the afternoon when the coffin was finally sealed. Su looked down at it and cried constantly. Couldn't bring herself to close it. Luckily, Wang was there. Tired of waiting, flustered and impatient, she moved Su out of the way and forced the cover on herself. But Su had done everything for her child. Yesterday she had burned paper money. This morning she had burned the 49 scripts. When she put him in the coffin, she had dressed him in his favorite clothes and put in his favorite toys, a clay figurine, 2 wooden bowls, and 2 glass cups. She had placed them all by his pillow. Afterwards, Wang had carefully looked over everything too and decided that nothing had been missed. Because Awu didn't come by, the landlord had to hire 2 people to carry and bury the coffin for 120 coppers. Wang cooked again for everyone that came to help. The sunlight gradually dimmed, and everyone began thinking of leaving, until finally they went home. Su felt a little faint, but after resting for a while, she began to feel better. Then immediately she felt very strange. It was a feeling she had never had before. Something that should have been impossible had happened. The more she thought about it, the more confused she felt. Something else was very strange. The room was too quiet. She stood up and lit a lantern. The room seemed even quieter. Feeling dizzy, she went to close the door and sit back on the edge of the bed. The spinning wheel stood silently on the floor. She collected herself and looked around. She began to think that she couldn't stand up. Not only was the room too quiet, it was too big and too empty. She realized then that her son was dead. She never wanted to see this room again. She blew out the lantern and lay back on the bed. She cried and thought back on when Bao had sat beside her eating aniseed beans while she spun. He had looked at her with his small black eyes and said, "Ma, Dad sells wonton. When I'm big, I'll sell wonton too. I'll get lots and lots of money, give it all back to you." Back then, even spinning cotton had seemed interesting. What was there now? There was no point in anything anymore. Since I've already said Su was a simple woman, what could she do? She thought the room was too quiet, too big, and too empty. Although Su was a simple woman, she did not believe in ghosts. She knew Bao could not come back. She took a deep breath and said to herself, "Bao, you must be here. Come and see me in my dreams." She closed her eyes and willed herself to sleep, where she could see him once again. In the silent and still expanse, she heard her own strained breathing. Su finally drifted away into the world of dreams. The room fell completely silent. At the same time, Gong staggered out from the Shenheng Hotel and raised his voice to sing, "My sweetheart, I pity you all alone." Awu draped his arm around Gong's shoulder, and the two began stumbling together, laughing, down the road. Su was sleeping. Gong was heading home. The Shenheng Hotel was closed. Lu Xun began to fall silent. All that was left was the night rushing on towards tomorrow, and a few dogs hidden in the darkness, barking.